Okay, so there's our 3 fuses in. Now, as you can see the way they're sitting, you could have easily extended the wires and actually put a small fuse box in here with a row of 3, which would have give you the same protection almost, but the longer wires and the fuse would be a bit easier to get to. But as you'll see when I go to put the ignition switch in, if I can rest the camera somewhere, they're actually pretty reasonably accessible once the switch goes in. Makes the switch nice and tidy. Job done. Time to measure some currents. Now time to check a few ratings of fuses, and to do that I'm using this little tool here. You can pick them up cheap as chips. You have your blade fuse probe, and all we need to do is pull out the existing fuse and insert the probe. So where the fuse goes, the probe goes. And we find the readings here. Get a touch back on. It's a bit better. Bit more light. So here we have the little device here, and we'll start simply by turning ignition on. Now this will vary depending on where the points are sitting. So at the moment we're sitting at 4.3 amps. We don't want to keep it on too long, the coil will be getting pretty unhappy, but we can see the difference now if we put first the side lights on, so it's jumped up to 6 amps or so. If we put the dip beam on, we're up to 12 amps, and if we go brave, put the high beam on, we're up to roughly 14 amps. So that fuse at 15 amps, if we had everything running, is a bit tight. I'm unsure if the horn runs off this. So 15, 16 amps if the horn runs off this, and quite a bit more if the wipers are running. So, but that's the main feed to most everything else. So we will go and measure the others now. But this fuse looks like, I would say, it would be a 25 amp fuse for in here, so that's what I'll put in at the moment. Okay, so now we have the second fuse, which is 2 of the white wires, hovering around a little bit, not too much. Let's see what happens if we put, yep, that's one of the ones that feeds the wipers. As you can see, I'm doing this dry, which is driving the current up quite a bit, which is something you need to account for in your fuse rating. So I would say that, it's not the horn, I'd say let's go for 10 amps on this one. And that'll be the last one, and as you can hear I've got the indicators on and a few other things, so I could put my other multimeter on, but it's not something that most people would have with a max hold function. But we can pretty much guess that that's peaking at over 7 amps at points. So let's go for, let's say we'll go for a 10 amp fuse on that as well. Now this is where it gets a bit more. We're looking to see what the wiper motor on its own does. And then we'll see we're up there peaking at 6.5 volts in some bits, and I'm running that dry deliberately. I mean, it'll cost myself a new set of wiper blades, but it's dry. So I would say we'll leave that at 7.5 amps for now. That's lower than the fuse that supplies that and multiple circuits in there, so if the wiper motor decides it's going on its own, then it will go on its own and should leave everything else intact. If it does turn out to be too small a value, no, better safer than sorry, you can always make it bigger. Well, I did test this earlier, but it's a bit too late now for it to be sounding horns even in the workshop. Neighbours will start to get upset, so you just need to take my word for it on this one rather than see the meter that 5 amps is okay for the horn. It came up about 3.5, 4 amps. Yes, it really is as greedy as that. But that's where we are with those. So realistically, the last ones that we would have would actually be the ignition one at the back, and the ignition one is roughly rated roughly where it needs to be already. We have two brake lamps at 21 watts each, so at 42 watts we're up at normal voltage of 12, we're up roughly 3.5 amps anyway, plus your ignition. So that fuse is currently rated roughly where it should be, and that's us mostly fused the early car as much as we can. So although we've cut into 2 wires and we had to do the extra work on the alternator, which wasn't planned. Generally, actually fusing one of these cars and keeping it reversible is not that bad, and it's always a good option. So if you decide to do it in your own, best of luck.